There's an article going around on Forbes about how Marathon is like a great game, but it's not a hit. Marathon is out, the reviews are starting to come in. There's been discourse for months. And if you look at that article, it's kind of like it's halfway true. Like, Marathon is a great game, but by the numbers, it's not really that big of a hit. Like, I get it. And especially to Sony, who probably had very unrealistic expectations for this game, who have already shut down, I think, 5 studios and games. I, for one, as somebody who loves Marathon, I'm pretty worried. Like, to me, the foundation of the game is exceptional. The gunplay, the art direction, the shells, how it's not really a hero shooter. It really does still feel like a shooter first type of game. The tension of a good run. Bungie really did what Bungie does best. But now we've hit this window, a very specific window, and what Bungie and Sony does inside of this window is going to determine whether Marathon becomes a classic or just a footnote in the gaming industry. So, my name's Holotide, welcome back. In this video, I'm not debating whether Marathon is good. To me, I've put in, I don't even know how many hours, over 50, 70 hours, 80 hours, I don't even know what it's at this point. But I think it's genuinely a great game. But what we're talking about today is the future of this game. To me, Bungie has 6 to 12 months to execute the original vision for this game before Sony's patience runs out and the corporate pressure really sets in. The population is going to stabilize, and that's kind of just what live service games do. So the question isn't if Marathon is alive right now. The question is, how are they going to grow it when this initial wave is over? But before we talk about the future, we gotta be honest about what Bungie has actually built here, because the discourse online wants to either crown this game or bury it, and I don't think either one of those is extremely accurate. The core gameplay loop is elite to me. Bungie has made some of the best feeling FPS games in the industry for 25 years, and I do believe that Marathon continues that. The weight of guns, the sound design, the feedback, just the personality is really best in class. The shells are not just cosmetic flavor. They fundamentally change how you move through a run and how your squad communicates and how you survive without it being like a full-on hero shooter ability-based game. The world that they've built on Tau Ceti is visually distinct in a genre that often looks like the same grungy hallway recycled forever. The lore is deep, the aesthetic is original, although there will be people that still believe that the entire aesthetic of this game is just stolen, which is silly to me. But the audio design is also incredible. Like, the game has so many things going for it that other extraction shooters just don't. I think that the seasonal reset structure is smart, but new players are either terrified of losing their gear or not even wanting to play, but that just makes it to where you're not permanently punished for joining the game late or not being able to grind like streamers. Loot stays meaningful. The competitive landscape will reshuffle. That's like a design decision that proves that they're not looking at just this like first 6 months of the game, but they're looking further ahead, like 2 years from now. So to me, the foundation is real. And that matters a lot for where this conversation is going to go, because you can't grow something that's hollow, no pun intended, at the center. And Marathon isn't hollow. The question, to me, is what gets built on top of all of this and whether Bungie gets the time to build it themselves. So Bungie is not operating just freely right now. They're a Sony studio. Sony paid billions of dollars for them. And that acquisition came with expectations. Now, even back then, Destiny 2's revenue was declining. There were layoffs. The pressure was on Marathon to perform, and to perform extremely well before the game even shipped. And now here we are, and by most commercial metrics, it's not a hit. It's not a disaster, but it's not what Sony needed it to be to justify that investment. And again, I'm not trying to fearmonger anything. It's just Sony's recent track record has been not full of patience for studios and games. So, in my estimation, Bungie is like a legacy studio, and between like Halo and bringing Destiny 1 and 2 back up to like super profitable, large games, I think that Sony is going to give them a window. And I think that window is 6 to 12 months where they get to work on their original creative vision uninterrupted. They'll be able to like run their roadmaps for the seasonal content and planned updates and iterate on things. And that can be a meaningful runway if Bungie is able to use it correctly. But if the population stabilizes at a level Sony deems unacceptable, all that changes to me. You're going to start to see intervention, whether that's monetized pressure, forced feature pivots, or the type of restructuring that reshapes the game's identity and layoffs and things like that. And we've seen it happen, and you know how the story can go. So the clock is ticking, and what is Bungie going to do with that? Like I said before, every live service game hits like that stabilization point for the player base to just level out. The launch spike fades, curious people who tried it and left and don't ever come back, and you're left with this real population, the people who are genuinely invested in the game. And for Marathon, I think that stabilization is also going to expose something that's been there since the beginning. The game rewards coordination, but I think the infrastructure for coordination isn't fully there yet. Solo queue, while I have a ton of fun, does feel even more punishing, and not because the design is broken, but because there's no real like pathway for solo players to grow into coordinated squads organically. There's like no built-in social network, no like casual playlists like games used to have that ease people into the more higher stakes modes. No real squad finder baked into the experience. I know you have squad fill, and while I've had many good runs with people on that, and I have reached out to people like not anonymously, but as like somebody who's like, hey, are you looking to queue up and stuff? I do seem to get hit with the, oh, I gotta go make dinner and everything. So I don't really know what the solution is to that. And it really might not be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But I think that from what I can tell, extraction shooters live and die by their communities forming squads. I know there are like third-party things and like Discord servers and all that stuff, but I really do feel like Marathon needs to exist inside of the game as well, not just around it. And when that population stabilizes and matchmaking gets a little bit longer and the skill gap between new and veteran players widens and you'll see casual players quietly bounce, that's the moment that determines the long-term health of the game. And right now, I don't think Marathon has fully solved for that moment. Now, I've talked about this on Twitter, and I've seen a lot of people either agree or disagree. People feel very strongly about this game, about its identity. They like to assume they know what the devs' vision of the game was, and that adding certain things will take away from that vision or goes against the game's core principles. Now, saying that, I think a lot of people don't realize what the devs' real plans are for the game. So for us to be like, concrete, no, we can't add this or do that. Like, all these games have limited time modes and stuff like that. Things are going to get added to the game. I just hope that the foundation of the extraction shooter side of things doesn't become like second fiddle to any of them. So like going forward, how do they grow Marathon? To me, I think you need to respect the mid-core player. We talk about casuals and stuff like that. And again, I feel like people really hate that word and use it as a slur, but I think that Marathon, again, sits between Tarkov and Arc Raiders. And while I can voice my opinion and say that, no, I don't think the game is like that difficult to learn and stuff like that, I do feel like the onboarding genuinely needs some work. I do feel like there's a lot of YouTube tutorials and stuff like that, but accessibility in the game with, the stakes that are like what are in Marathon just quite aren't at the same level that they need to be. Now, I know that there's like intro to Marathon, perimeter queue and stuff like that, and that's fine. And maybe that's where these limited time modes will come in handy where, maybe there's like a horde mode where you just shoot ticks or something like that. I don't know. Maybe they add a PvP arena mode at some point and it's all just sponsored kits and bullies. I don't know. But I think it's naive to think that they're not going to add on to the game in that capacity and they aren't already thinking about making sure that they're offering things to keep people hooked on Marathon. And again, these things are to be used as a funnel to get people either just on the game and then, playing a couple matches of that and being like, oh, I want to go play the regular extraction side of stuff. Like, it's to boost the player base overall. As for another addition kind of thing that I hope they do is that the seasonal model makes the world feel like it's changing and evolving, and it's not just like a checklist of content, like new runner, new map section or something. Like, I think the best live service games feel like they're going somewhere. Like, I think of Helldivers 2, and I don't even play Helldivers 2, but like the world of that game and all the like propaganda and the dungeon master guy and the planets being attacked and just all that stuff is great to have in a game to get people invested in that world. And like Marathon, like the world feels like it has memory and consequences and just narrative momentum. And that's something that Destiny did when it was at its best. I think that Bungie needs to make sure that the story of Tau Ceti is progressing. Players need to feel like they're a part of something building, not just running the same maps on a 3-month loop. This is one that I think is going to be a topic of conversation for a while going forward, and I don't know where I land on it at this point. But it's the free-to-play conversation, and if it does come to that, it's got to be on Bungie's terms, not Sony's. And I know it's controversial, and the extraction shooter genre does have real competition right now. I do think that there's a barrier for people even now to spend $40 on a game when there's so many free-to-play games out there. But then if you do make Marathon free, I think that you see like an increase in cheaters and all that stuff. It's like a super double-edged sword. And like I went through the free-to-play iteration of Halo with Halo Infinite, and I don't know, like I really, like, of course I want as many people as possible to try this game out and to see why it's so good and to get hooked on it like I did. But I don't know if free-to-play is the right answer to that. I think those free-to-play weekends and stuff can be, but I don't know where Bungie really goes. We've had the initial marketing push for launch, and you had all the big streamers playing and stuff like that. It's gonna be hard for Bungie to get Marathon like back in the spotlighting, back to getting people to try it and stuff, especially when like the Peanut Guy streams Marathon and everybody in the chat's like, yeah, Marathon. So it's like, it's difficult. And honestly, I do think that like a game like Concord should have been free to play. And I think that even when it launched and like had bad like reviews or whatever it was, just bad feedback, that Sony was silly to shut that game down, because now they've set this precedence and this meme. They should have just made the game free to play, refunded everybody their money, and attempted to grow the game for like a year, take feedback and stuff, but instead they've created a monster. All right, so this is what I keep coming back to when I think about this and when I think about Marathon's future. Bungie does know how to run a live service game. They have more institutional knowledge about keeping a live game breathing than like any other studio on the planet, I think. They've made mistakes with Destiny, like really bad mistakes, and they've somehow pulled that game back from the edge multiple times through miracles or whatever you want to classify it as. And to me, Marathon has a better foundation than Destiny 2 at launch, has a clearer identity, a more distinct aesthetic, and to me is genuinely fun. The question was never, is this game good enough to survive, in my opinion, because I didn't see this game launching and having a gigantic player base in the beginning anyways. It's whether Bungie will get the runway to grow it properly and whether they use that runway on the things that actually matter. And to be honest, the feedback that they've been implementing into the game and stuff, and the game director talking on Twitter, I actually have a lot of faith. But 6 to 12 months. That's the window that I see. If they work on a couple of the things that I mentioned and they make the world feel alive and all that stuff, I genuinely think Marathon can last. I think it can absolutely grow, but I think the next 2 seasons can't just be and aren't just content updates. Like in the grand scheme of things, they're the argument that Bungie will make to Sony and really to their own players about why this game deserves a future. And I'm going to be watching it closely. I think you should too. I love this game. I want to see it thrive. I want to see it survive. I want to see Sony backing this game because they've been so quick to shut down others. But drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Bungie has the ability and the runway to pull it off? Do you think the player base is just going to keep declining? Let me know in the comments down below. I read all of them. Please be respectful. If you want more videos about Marathon, make sure you subscribe, like the video, hype the video. I do have another one about feedback from players for Marathon that I'm working on right now. It has become a large video. So keep an eye out for that, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace!